Hello everyone, and welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today we are going to do a watercolor landscape painting from a photograph. I'll put a small version of the photograph here for you guys to check out and see how things go. And on my Patreon, I'll have the photo uploaded if you'd like to use it and follow along. In front of me, I have a quarter sheet of Stonehenge Aqua, and I'm thoroughly saturating this paper. Then we'll dive into the painting process. I'm going to use the medium Ranson hake brush. This one is quite well worn and used, so you may not get the same textures as me, but play around with it, have fun, and develop your own stuff and get your own style as you play around and follow along. So this sky is very blue. I think we'll grab some ultramarine blue, we'll gradiate down, and maybe switch over to a cerulean blue. Be our format, be our horizon line. I think I'm really going to get this ultramarine to pop out. I might be grabbing a little bit of phthalo blue, as close to it on my palette, and I'm just reconstituting. Get that going. And we'll get it stronger as it comes closer to us, but I'm going to wind up changing the color of the water. This is for me to just get everything in perspective. Now, I mentioned getting some variety in the sky, so here is cobalt blue, so we'll go with that since I put it out. I think cobalt is more of a neutral blue. It would have been better if I had grabbed cerulean, but I'm rolling with it. Honestly, I always accidentally grab that cobalt blue instead of the cerulean. It might be that the tubes look very similar. So we got a strong sky. Bring it down here. And we'll talk about compositional ideas. This photograph, when I took it, I was thinking about all the light coming from behind this group of trees. So I'm thinking we can take our paper towel and lift up pure white out of those spots. Keep that white there. Let's bring a little bit of paper towel softening. I'm just harping on this so much because the sky is just so clear. We have no clouds that I want that gradation there. All right, so let's move away from that. Now, I'll use this blue for two reasons. I don't want to wash off the brush. I need to get in the habit of having two water pots, one for cleaning and one for fresh. But I'm going to use it to map out my trees. Usually I'll take a raw sienna to do something like that, or I'll mix some light red oxide for a distant bluish purple. But I think this will be fine to map out. And I'll even use it to map out this shape. We have the gray of the rocks in the slate here, mixing with a earth tone would help us get our grays. Okay, so I'm just using that color, mapping it out. Let's grab some raw sienna. Raw sienna with ultramarine gives us a muted, kind of a slate color. A little greenish. I don't know why that mixture doesn't give a stark green. I do like the cooling effect. It just has that that shadow feel where it's just nice and cool, and then we have the bright sun coming through. This will be the shadow into the water, which will shape out some more in a bit. I do want to connect that far distant line though. I might grab a little bit more ultramarine just to give that far horizon connection. Okay, so our shadows are going to come down. And it's probably really weird that I'm using the blue and the raw sienna to do this, but I think it'll give an overall interesting feel to it. I'll grab some burnt sienna. This will give a little of that red, muddyish tone to the water. This is the Vermilion River. It's looking south on it. It's looking south towards Pumping Plant Road. You can use that raw burnt sienna to come up some. Shape out our trees. Grab some burnt umber. Probably have to put out some fresh burnt umber. Just to kind of give a little back information, today is Wednesday, and I tried the other scene yesterday facing north. This is facing south. And I felt like I wasn't in the flow of things. It's homecoming week at school, so the kids are very excitable. It's just been long days at work. So when I am home and have time to paint, before this, we're in the weight room coaching. So coming home to paint, the great thing about watercolors is that honestly there's really not much setup. There's a little bit of struggling not using fresh paint and having to reconstitute some. This is Payne's Gray, by the way. I don't know if I have mentioned that. You can see where I pulled the water up so it has that dry brush texture right there. And that'll really sit forward and make it interesting. But watercolor is just such an easy way to pick up a brush and get started. That's really one of the things that led me to watercolor painting, was just the ease of the setup. This, you know, we have busy lives, and it's very easy to find excuses to lay on the couch, which is fine. If you're laying on the couch watching this or playing on TikTok or whatever, that's fine. But just know that with watercolor, you don't have to really worry about setting up a palette. You could have fun. All right, I want to start darkening this water now and start really playing with this reflection. If you follow this channel, you'll know that I really like to work the water during the wet and wet stage. And I like to focus on horizontal strokes to give that horizontal plane of the water. That idea, that horizontal idea, I had picked up. It was said, I think in a video by Eric Kopel, a oil painter. And it was just something that just seemed very easy and resonated very simply. And it works really well. And you can bring down vertical lines, bring down those shapes, but then a pass horizontally will help. All right, let's start bringing out some dark back here. What do we want to use? We can use Payne's Gray, and it will lighten up some. But I'm thinking that our earth tone mixes with ultramarine will help. Now I'm not doing this exact, I'm just using just the general composition. Just letting it lead to this point back here, which then comes to this tree, which pops out. I do like to work a painting overall and try to develop it uniformly. So we'll jump over to this tree. And so I know it seems like it's jumping around a little bit, but the idea is that I am working with wet and wet, and as the paper dries, I want to hit everything equally, where one side doesn't really seem different than the other, if that makes sense. I guess a good example would be if you were outside painting a fence and you were taking your time making everything nice and neat, and you're making it nice and clean, you're getting around the yard, the day is getting hotter, and near the end you just start slapping the paint onto the fence. I don't want that to happen. I want the scene to develop uniformly. And I thought of a Chinese brush painting book that I had looked at. And in the introduction, the author and the artist had said, "I apologize if things seem very bare basic, or it seems like he's talking down, or it's just blatantly obvious. But the view that he had to take as an author and as a teacher was that he had to assume that the reader knew nothing going into it. And that was his approach. Which sometimes if I talk into too much detail, just keep that in mind, because I really don't know who is watching this. Or if somebody is watching that struggles with English, or just understanding my accent or dialect or anything, that a repetition or an in-depth explanation of something simple might help them. Now, there's been no complaints about that, but you know, of course we're all self-conscious. We have that reflection coming down right here from this low-lying branch here. I'm just using Payne's Gray to put it together. Since we're still wet and wet, I'm going to scrape out these rocks. And this is just a cut up credit card. Which, I'm no financial advisor, but getting out of credit card debt is awesome. So once you get a chance to cut up your cards, enjoy it, and use them to paint. Now my mom usually watches these videos, and that's probably something she's going to comment and laugh about. I'm going to get a message that says something. So Mom, if you made it this far, hey, love you. My mother's very supportive of my art, and I love that. So thank you, Mom. All right. Now there's blues in here, so I'm going to grab more of that cobalt blue and increase that chroma, that value. I'm not great with the jargon. I apologize. But the thing that I'm fighting here is that the water is drying and we're getting a lightening taking place of the overall scene. So rather than doing a dry off, I'm just battling that right now so that I don't fiddle around too much in the water after the dry off. Lemon yellow is going to really interact weird with this scene once we play with that. Let's grab some lemon yellow. So the brush is dirty. I didn't add any water to it. So it's just going to be a mixture of the lemon yellow and that blue. I'll use this for that highlighted side, the right side catching the light. I can bring a little bit of that color down below. Paint such dark and moody scenes, it's weird painting daylight scenes. Bring this texture here. Should we do a dry off? Let's grab a little bit of Payne's Gray just to accentuate the dark, and then I'll do a dry off. Let me do a pause. All right, so we're fairly dry. Now we can start working on some contrast and sharper brush marks. And some water on the palette. Put on a little bit of burnt umber. I think I'm going to grab some phthalo blue. So I'm going to mix my dark from that. And this is what I'm going to use for my closer foliage for this tree. Now, the thing with this is that we have branches coming out over it. So I'm going to push back and forth build the density of that. Let the textures weave in and out. A little bit. Those end pieces. Let's grab the #1 rigger, mix some Payne's gray in that just to get darker values. And we'll play around in here, just flicking out. We may come back to this. We'll see how we are time-wise. Cobalt blue. I want to accentuate this spot right here. I think I'll do a cleanup of the brush. And when I do that, I use a paper towel to pull most of that water out. I'll bring that stronger blue down. And since this area is wet, if I wanted to, I can wet a spot and then come back in and wipe out with the paper towel and try to lift a little bit. It's wet and lift. Just experiment with different techniques. A little bit of blue on that edge. Let's get a gray going with that raw sienna, kind of just a muted color. Just get our texture in here. Just so I don't have to clean a brush. #4 rigger with a little bit of Payne's gray for that dark edge right there. Just a few marks to accent the shadow edges, the rocks. Okay, let's move our focus to another spot. Grabbing some burnt sienna. As much as I hate to come back in and paint over the dried water, we're going to do that. Two together. Ultramarine to darken it up, so that mix that we kind of went to earlier. Darker shadows. And we'll grab lemon yellow, what we can. We might have to put out some fresh lemon yellow. I'm going to pick out a little bit of texture back here. A little bit of highlights on the lighted side. We'll see how that works. And then scrape out some highlights on the water. More horizontal than anything. Okay, so we're at the 27-minute mark. I'll fiddle around a little bit more, then we'll do a dry off and see how things look. I'll tell you, the delve back into color or daylight has been a little tough. I feel like I haven't quite pulled it all back together. But it has potential. The darkness in this spot just feels really important to me. Ooh, somebody just came up the porch. Must be a package. Which is hopefully art supplies. Little dry brush texture. Now I'm just going to loosen up in the last few minutes. You might say, oh, you haven't been painting loose? I think vertical strokes here will help. Let's pull in that shadow. Darken. Lemon yellow. I think we'll do our dry off and take a look. We're exactly 30 minutes in. So let's see. All right, so after a good long dry off, here's the results. I hope you enjoyed. You're more than welcome to follow along. Like I said, the photo is up on the Patreon if you want to download that and use it. If you do follow along, I'd love to see your results. I'm going to experiment more with this delve into color, as I feel like I'm a little shaky with it, but it is fun exploring different things. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to y'all soon.